My fiancé said at dinner, "Your accent is so embarrassing. Can you just talk normal?" English is my third language. I'd moved here at 19. I said in perfect English, "I'll work on it." Then I switched to my native language for the rest of the meal. When she realized she couldn't understand a single word and everyone was staring. Original post. I, 30 male, was born in West Africa. I grew up speaking Yoruba at home and French at school. I learned English starting around 14, mostly from movies, music, and a tutor my mother paid for with money she didn't really have because she believed English would open doors. When I was 19, I moved to the U.S. on a student visa. I got a degree in accounting, passed the CPA exam on my second try, and I've been working at a mid-size accounting firm for the last 5 years. I make $87,000. I own a used Honda Accord. I send money home to my mother every month. I have an accent. The accent is there. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. It's a blend. Yoruba cadence underneath, French rhythm mixed in, American vocabulary on top. Most people understand me fine. Sometimes I have to repeat a word. Sometimes someone asks, "Where are you from?" And I tell them and they say, "Oh, cool." And we move on. It's never been a problem. At work, with friends, at the grocery store. Never. Not once in 11 years has someone told me my English was a barrier. Until my fiancée. We'd been together for 3 years. Engaged for 4 months. She's American-born, works in hospital administration. She's smart, organized, and, I thought, someone who respected where I came from. When we first started dating, she used to say my accent was charming. She'd ask me to say things in Yoruba because she thought it sounded beautiful. She told her friends she was dating a multilingual man, like it was a feature, not a flaw. The shift was gradual. Around year 2, she started correcting me. Not big things, small stuff. I'd say a word with the wrong emphasis, and she'd repeat it back the right way. I'd use a phrase that was technically correct but structured differently than how an American would say it. And she'd go, "That's not how we say it here." I let it go. I figured she was trying to help. Then the corrections became comments. "You really need to work on your pronunciation. Sometimes I can barely understand you." People at work asked me where you were from, and I had to explain your whole background. It was exhausting. That last one stung. My whole background, the country, the languages, the immigration, was exhausting for her to explain. But the dinner is what broke everything. It was a Friday night. We were at a restaurant, a nice one, the kind with cloth napkins and a wine list. She'd invited her brother and his wife. We'd met them several times before. Her brother is fine, quiet guy, doesn't say much, nods a lot. His wife has always been friendly to me. Normal double date energy. We were looking at menus, and I was telling her brother about a new client I'd picked up at work, a small manufacturing company with interesting tax situations. Mid-sentence, I said something about amortization schedules, and apparently my pronunciation of amortization wasn't crisp enough because my fiancé cut me off. "Okay, babe, stop." She put her hand on my arm. "Your accent is so embarrassing right now. Can you just talk normal? Please." She said it at a volume that carried. The table next to us glanced over. Her brother's wife froze with her water glass halfway to her mouth. Her brother looked at his menu like it had suddenly become the most interesting document in the world. I sat there for about 3 seconds. The restaurant noise sort of dimmed around me. I could feel heat behind my ears, that specific kind of heat that comes from shame being placed on you by someone who's supposed to be your person. Then I said in perfectly clear English, "I'll work on it." She smiled, satisfied, like she'd successfully corrected a misbehaving child in public. She picked her menu back up and said, "Thank you. Now, what looks good?" I looked at my menu. Then I looked at her brother's wife, who was staring at me with an expression I describe as secondhand horror. And I made a decision. I turned to the waiter, who had just walked up, and ordered my entire meal in Yoruba. Full sentences, calm voice, perfect grammar. I described what I wanted, asked a question about the preparation, and complimented the menu, all in a language nobody at that table could understand. The waiter, understandably, stared at me. My fiancé's mouth opened. Her brother looked up from his menu. His wife made a sound that was either a laugh or a cough. I couldn't tell. My fiancé said, "What are you doing?" I looked at her and said, in Yoruba, You told me not to speak English the way I speak it. So I'm speaking the way I was born speaking. Is this better? I don't understand what you're saying. I switched to French. No? How about this? This is my second language. Still not normal enough? Stop it. You're making a scene. I went back to Yoruba. Calmly. I narrated my menu selection, my thoughts on the wine list, and a brief observation about the lighting in the restaurant. All in a language she'd once called beautiful, and now couldn't access because she'd told me the only language we shared wasn't good enough. Her brother's wife, and I give this woman full credit, said quietly, in English, I think he understood you perfectly. I don't think you understood him. My fiancée stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked to the bathroom. I ordered for both of us in English when the waiter came back. Steak for me, salmon for her, because even when I was making a point, I still knew her order. Her brother leaned across the table and said, For what it's worth, your English is fine, man. I said, I know. Update 1. She didn't speak to me on the drive home. Full silence. When we got back to the apartment, my apartment, Lisa my name, she'd semi-moved in about 8 months ago. She went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I slept on the couch. Not because I was kicked out, because I needed space to think. The next morning, she came out swinging. Not physically, verbally. She sat at the kitchen counter and delivered what I can only describe as a prepared statement. What you did last night was humiliating. You embarrassed me in front of my brother and his wife. You made me look bad in a public restaurant. You acted like a child. I was making coffee. I let her finish. I asked you one simple thing. To be more aware of how you sound in social settings. That's not an attack. That's feedback. And instead of receiving it like an adult, you threw a tantrum in another language. I poured my coffee, took a sip. Then I said, You called my accent embarrassing at a dinner table in front of your family and a room full of strangers. You asked me to talk normal, which implies how I naturally talk is abnormal. English is my third language. I learned it at 14. I moved to a country where I knew nobody, in a language I was still learning, and I built a career, passed a professional licensing exam, and communicate every single day without issue. If after all that, the way I say amortization is embarrassing to you, the problem isn't my accent. She said, You're twisting my words. Your words were pretty straight. You said your accent is so embarrassing. That's a direct quote. I'm in that moment. You were being hard to understand. Your brother understood me. His wife understood me. The waiter understood me. You understood me. Nobody at that table had trouble with my English except you. She got quiet. Then she pivoted, which is what she does when she can't win the argument she started. Fine. I'm sorry, I said it the way I said it. But you need to understand that when we're around certain people, the way you present yourself reflects on both of us. Certain people, like your brother, like anyone. So my accent reflects poorly on you. That's exactly what you said. You're just using more words to say it. She left the apartment, went to her mom's house, and that's when phase 2 started. Her mom called me that afternoon. Now, her mom has been polite to me for 3 years, but I've always sensed a layer underneath. She's the kind of person who smiles at you while mentally cataloging everything she doesn't approve of. She'd made small comments over the years. Oh, that's how they do things where you're from? When I ate with my hands at a family barbecue? Or, your English is really improved, said with surprise, as if she expected me to still be struggling. Her mom's call was direct. She said, My daughter told me what happened at dinner. She's very upset. I think you owe her an apology. I said, with respect, she told me my accent was embarrassing in front of a restaurant full of people. I don't think I'm the one who owes an apology. She was trying to help you. You know, accents can be hard for some people to understand. She understood me fine for 3 years. Well, maybe she was being polite. I let that one sit. Then I said, was she being polite when she called my accent charming on our first date? Or when she asked me to teach her Yoruba words? Was that politeness too? Her mom didn't have a quick answer for that. She said, I just think you overreacted. Speaking another language at a dinner to prove a point was disrespectful. Being told how I speak is abnormal while I'm eating salmon was also disrespectful. But only one of us is expected to apologize. She hung up. Her brother's wife texted me that evening. A long message. The gist? I want you to know that what she said at dinner was wrong. My husband won't say it because he doesn't get involved in his sister's relationship, but I could see his face. He was embarrassed. For her, not for you. Your English is perfectly fine. You don't owe anyone a different voice. That message meant more than she probably knows. Over the next few days, my fiancée stayed at her mom's. She texted me intermittently, not to apologize, but to negotiate. She wanted me to acknowledge my part in the restaurant scene. She wanted me to agree that speaking Yoruba was an overreaction. She wanted me to promise I wouldn't do something like that again. Every text was framed as meeting in the middle, but the middle she was proposing was entirely on her side. I said, I'll have a conversation when you're ready to acknowledge that what you said was hurtful. Not poorly worded, not taken out of context. Hurtful. She said, you're being impossible. I said, I'm being clear. There's a difference. Update 2. So it's been about 10 days. She came back to the apartment on day 5, not to reconcile, but because most of her work clothes were in the closet and she had a Monday morning meeting. But once she was back, she stayed. Awkward coexistence. Separate sleeping. Minimal conversation. Like roommates who'd had a disagreement about the thermostat, except the thermostat was my identity. During those 10 days, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I started thinking back, not emotionally, analytically, like building a case file. And once I started cataloging the incidents, the pattern was undeniable. The time she told me to order for us at a restaurant because the waiter might not understand you, even though the waiter and I had been having a perfectly normal exchange. The time she suggested I let her do the talking at a car dealership because they'll take you more seriously with an American voice. The time she got frustrated during a phone call with our internet provider and said, just let me do it. You'll confuse them. The time she told her friends I was practically American as a compliment, as if the parts of me that weren't American were something to be apologized for. And the smaller stuff, finishing my sentences when I'd pause to find a word, repeating what I said to other people in clearer English, which was often the exact same sentence I just said, introducing me at parties with, he's from West Africa, but don't worry, his English is great, like she was offering a disclaimer before I opened my mouth. I'd rationalized every single one. She's trying to help. She's looking out for me. She doesn't mean it that way. But stacked together, they weren't individual incidents. They were a policy. She was embarrassed by me, not by my accent specifically, but by the foreignness it represented. The accent was just the most audible version of it. I shared this with my older cousin, my mother's nephew, who'd moved to the U.S. about 4 years before me. He's a nurse. He has an accent too, thicker than mine. I called him and laid out the whole thing. He was quiet for a minute. Then he said, brother, let me tell you something. When a person loves you, your accent is the last thing they hear. When a person tolerates you, it's the first. Then I called my mother. Back home. She asked how the wedding planning was going. I told her what happened at the dinner. My mother is a small woman with a voice that could stop a room. She said, in Yoruba, she told you to stop sounding like yourself? Yes. And you're still in this house with her? We're figuring it out. What is there to figure out? If she's ashamed of your mouth, she'll be ashamed of your children's mouths. Leave. My mother has never been subtle. But she wasn't wrong. I came home from work the following Tuesday and told my fiancée we needed to have a real conversation. She sat down. I sat across from her. I said, I've been thinking about this for 10 days, and I want to be direct. The comment at dinner wasn't isolated. You've been correcting me, speaking for me, and editing me for over a year. You introduced me with disclaimers. You took over conversations because you assumed people couldn't understand me. You called my accent embarrassing in a room full of people. And when I showed you exactly how it felt to not be understood, you called it an overreaction. She started to interrupt. I held up my hand. I speak 3 languages. You speak 1. I moved to a country where I had nothing, learned everything from scratch, passed a licensing exam in my 3rd language, and built a career. And you, the person who's supposed to be my partner, told me I should talk normal. I can't marry someone who thinks my voice is a problem to be solved. She stared at me. So what are you saying? I'm saying the engagement is off. Over a comment at dinner? You're canceling a wedding over 1 comment. It wasn't 1 comment. It was 100 comments, and one dinner that finally made me hear them. She cried, told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life, told me I'd never find someone who tolerated as much as she did. That word, tolerated, she actually used it, out loud, while trying to convince me to stay. I said, I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be understood. I asked for the ring back. She said no. I said, I paid $4,600 for that ring. It was a gift conditional on marriage. There's no marriage. The ring comes back. She said she'd think about it. I told her I'd give her a week and then I'd consult a lawyer, because in our state, an engagement ring given in anticipation of marriage is recoverable if the marriage doesn't happen. She gave it back 3 days later, left it on the kitchen counter with no note. I guess the kitchen counter is where rings go to die in these stories. Update 3. Final. It's been about 5 weeks since the breakup. Here's where everything landed. She moved out within a week. Her mom came with a pickup truck and they loaded everything in 2 trips. Her mom didn't speak to me during either trip, just tight smiles and pointed silence. On the second trip, as they were loading the last box, her mom turned to me and said, I hope you know what you're giving up. I said, I know exactly what I'm giving up. That's why I'm giving it up. My ex told our mutual friend group a version of events that was technically accurate but emotionally edited. Her version, I flipped out at dinner and humiliated her by speaking another language in front of everyone. She left out the part where she called my accent embarrassing. She left out the corrections, the disclaimers, the years of small erosions. In her story, she made one tiny mistake, and I blew up the engagement over it. For about a week, 2 of our mutual friends were cold toward me. They texted vague stuff like, that seems like an extreme reaction, and couldn't you have just talked it out? Then her brother's wife got involved. Without me asking, without me even knowing, she told 2 people in our friend group what actually happened at the dinner. Word for word, including, your accent is so embarrassing, and can you just talk normal? She also mentioned the context, that it was said at full volume in a restaurant, that other diners looked over, that my fiancé said it with zero hesitation. The 2 friends who'd been cold went quiet for a day. Then one texted me, I didn't know she said that. I'm sorry. That changes things. The other one didn't text me directly, but unfollowed my ex on Instagram, which in the economy of our friend group was a clear enough statement. Her brother called me once, about 2 weeks after the breakup. He said, I should have said something at that dinner. I didn't, and I'm sorry. I said, you don't need to apologize. Yeah, I do. My wife has been on my case about it, and she's right. I sat there and said nothing while my sister talked to you like that. That's on me. Your sister is your family. You were about to be my family too, and I let you down. I respected that call. It couldn't have been easy. The ring, I sold it. Got about $3,200 back on the $4,600 I paid. Not great, but I sent $1,500 of it to my mother. She didn't ask what it was for. I told her it was a bonus from work. She said God is good, and I let her believe that because sometimes the simplified version is the kinder one. My ex's mom made one more attempt. She sent me a long email, not a text, an email, about how I'd thrown away a good woman over cultural differences and that I needed to accept that living in America means adapting to American norms. She said my accent was something to work on, not something to be proud of. I read that email twice. Then I forwarded it to my cousin. He said, print that. Frame it. Hang it in your office. Every time you feel like you don't belong here, read it and remember, you belong here so much that someone had to write a whole email trying to convince you otherwise. I didn't frame it, but I didn't delete it either. It lives in a folder on my phone labeled receipts. The honest part, the part that isn't satisfying or funny or good for a Reddit post. The accent thing got in my head. For about 2 weeks after the breakup, I caught myself second-guessing how I said things. In meetings at work, I'd slow down and over-enunciate. On the phone with clients, I'd simplify my sentences. I was editing myself, doing exactly what she trained me to do, even after she was gone. My cousin noticed during a phone call. He said, "Why are you talking like a GPS?" I laughed, and then I stopped doing it. I called my mother last week. We talked for 40 minutes in Yoruba, about her garden, about my aunt's new business, about a neighbor who bought a ridiculous car he can't afford. Normal family stuff. And halfway through the call, I realized I was smiling. Not because of anything specific, because I was talking freely. No corrections, no disclaimers, no one measuring my words against a standard I didn't set. My mother asked, "How is your English these days?" I said, "My English is fine, Mama." She said, "Of course it is. You learn from the best." She meant herself. She speaks about 30 words of English. But she's the one who paid for the tutor. She's the one who sent me here. She's the reason I have 3 languages instead of 1. And if 3 languages and an accent make someone embarrassed to sit with me at dinner, then that table was never where I was supposed to be. I still work at the same firm, still drive the same Accord, still send money home. My accent hasn't changed. It's the same one I walked into this country with at 19, a little smoother, a little more American around the edges, but still mine. Still Yoruba underneath, French in the middle, English on top. And anyone who wants to sit across from me at a restaurant is going to hear all 3. That's not a flaw.